What's up, my brothers? Late Saturday night. Y'all are probably going to catch this a little bit earlier in the morning. I'm still having coffee, however, just to make you guys feel better. It's not going to keep me up. Nothing does anymore. So, pot of coffee just fine in the morning or late at night. So we are coming to the end of Isaiah 58. Some of you are probably pretty happy about that. Some of you maybe have listened to me and have taken some time to read this on your own and meditate, and you've come to realize it's a lot bigger deal than we thought, this Isaiah 58. He's been trying to help us figure out not only how to get the Zoe, that great type of life that Jesus offers, but there's even some secrets in this about maybe how our country could find its way back. And now we're coming to the end. Crazy. Check this out. Isaiah 58. A few verses away. It might take us 2 more months to get through this, but it says, and he, by the way, remember, he's just been basically talking about not going through the religious motions and really caring for people, specifically the poor. Great promises of what he will do in our lives if we get on about the things that he's into. And then he says in verse 13, chapter 58, if you keep your feet from breaking the Sabbath and from doing as you please on my holy day, if you call the Sabbath a delight and the Lord's holy day honorable, and if you honor it by not going your own way and not doing as you please or speaking idle words, then you will find your joy in the Lord, and I will cause you to ride in the triumphs of the heights of the land and to feast on the inheritance of your father Jacob, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Oh no, there they go. They're going to tell us that we got to start doing the Sabbath thing again. Yep, the old Sabbath message coming around once again. And why does it come around once again? Because of every other reason why God had to keep sending prophets, because he just has to remind them of the same thing he's been telling them over and over. And here we are again, the Sabbath. Interestingly, the Sabbath, keeping it, is in the 10 Commandments, along with thou shalt not murder. So I know whenever you hear the Sabbath message, you probably are thinking, oh, I'm working on it, getting better at it. What if you had a buddy that was working on murder? Like last year he took out 8 dudes, and this year he only took out 4. And you're sitting around having coffee, and you're going, hey, how's your temptations going? And his temptations, of course, are to kill people. And so he goes, well, Hugh, it's been a great year. I've only offed 4 guys. And you go, well, good job. You're working on it. That's kind of how we view the parts of the 10 Commandments or the commands of the Lord in regards to the Sabbath. But clearly, joking aside, there must be something deeper in this, because the only thing he's been telling us, like for him to give his full blessing to us, is to really care for the world and keep the Sabbath. Like he doesn't pick 15 things. He doesn't even go back to the 10 Commandments. He's just going like, just do 2 things. Care for the poor, keep the Sabbath. Like, so for him, maybe it is top 2. Honestly, maybe it's, maybe everything in our lives might come back around if we understood what he was really talking about. So interestingly enough, I'll just give you guys a little honest thoughts from my life. I've been on probably a good 3-year, what I would call a dry time. If you've walked with the Lord for any length of years, you have seasons where it seems like it's just really easy to get the feels for the Lord, and there's emotion tied to it, and it's just easy. There's other times where you go into seasons where we call them dry times or desert times. A lot of people that have written on spiritual formation through the centuries even talk about like dark nights of the soul, like where people that have great faith in God just don't feel them. And I'm definitely not in a dark night of the soul, but it's been a 3-year trudge. I can remember seasons of my life where I literally could not get enough time with the Lord just to read scripture and to pray. During those times, I almost memorized the New Testament. I just loved my time. And there were times where I felt very almost supernatural connection with him, where I felt the joy. I would actually just, I'm not a weeper, but I just would, break down because I just felt the love of God so much. And, the last 3 years, I don't know if it's I'm getting old, and maybe you just lose, your feels. But yeah, it's been, I've been more blocking and tackling, driving in the right lane, just, doing what I know the Lord will want me to do, but without a lot of the emotion and the sense of connection. Well, the other morning, I actually feel like I broke the drought. Something happened. I went out on the patio, and I wasn't really studying for you guys. I just was, I actually woke up and I felt like I was supposed to read John 6. So that hasn't happened in a long time, where I actually have a scripture. And I was wide awake when I remember going, oh, John 6. So I got up, sensing the Lord was maybe going to say something to me. And I found a Bible in the old bathroom and grabbed the old reading glasses and went outside, grabbed a cup of coffee, and by sort of headlamp, I'm reading John 6. And I just, I don't know, I just really sensed the presence of the Lord. And then I later realized it did tie into exactly what he's talking about today. But I'm going to take you to John 6. We might actually go Isaiah 58, the last inch, and then John 6 for a couple weeks. But I'm going to just walk you through the framework of it. But I would ask you to go and add that to the reading. Just start going through John 6. I'm going to whip you through kind of the way it's laid out, but it starts with with Jesus feeding the 5,000. If you remember the story, large multitudes of people are following Jesus, and he stops, and the disciples are like, I wonder how we're going to, look at all these hungry people. And Jesus does the old miracle of grabbing the fish and the loaves from a young boy, and he gathers the disciples, and he kind of goes, hey, pixie dust, poof, poof. And there's a bunch more fish and bread, and the disciples probably are having the day of their life, going in and out of this little huddle, getting more fish and bread from this little tiny boy with a little bit of fish and a little bit of bread. And then they see all these hungry people fed. And so they're coming off of that. And then right after that, we have that great story where the winds come up and Jesus is out in the lake, and the disciples are freaking out about, being afraid of the waters. And again, more people are still trying to find Jesus. They had heard about this miracle about the bread and the fish. And so Jesus and the disciples see more crowds coming to them. And so Jesus goes on the other side where he can try to get away from them. And then he begins to teach in this way. It says, then they found him on the other side of the lake, and they asked him, Rabbi, when did you get here? And Jesus answered, truly, I tell you, you are not looking for me because you saw the signs I performed, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill. Jesus is going like, you're starting to come after me way before miracles is just your natural hunger, your desire to have food for yourself and your family. And then he says this, do not work for the food that spoils, but for the food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. Jesus oftentimes will use our natural hungers to teach the bigger principles. So now he's going, okay, so you were hungry. You were following me because you were hungry, but don't work. He uses the word work for food that just satisfies your belly, but work for a truer sense of food. Work for something that will satisfy you forever. And then it says they asked him, what must we do to do the works of God? So they're basically going, how do we get the food? They still don't get it. How do we get the food? And Jesus answered, the work of God is this. Okay, listen, you would have went, okay, what's the work? Trying to get food, desperate to get food for my family, to provide for my family. So what's the work? The work is this, to believe in the one who sent me. What's all the franticness, all the 2 or 3 jobs that we need to provide for a family? No. If you want food that really will satisfy, you just have to work to believe in what I'm telling you, but really more who I am and what I can do for you. Jesus talking more about the source. Like if you really can believe that I am who I said that I am, then you will stop worrying about all this other stuff. I remember a friend of mine was making up a definition of a disciple one time, and it was maybe one of the best ones I ever heard. He said, a true disciple is somebody that learns to go from unbelief to belief in every aspect of their life. Let me say it again. A disciple is somebody that goes from unbelief to belief in every aspect of life. And all they're saying in that is that for some of us, for whatever reason, we can sometimes trust God for like the afterlife. So if the doctor told you you had cancer, you might actually go, okay, I can deal with that. I kind of have a sense that my afterlife is fine. But you may not be trusting God for your finances today. It's just like there's little nuances of our lives where we can trust him in some areas and we don't trust him in other areas. It's pretty normal. So when you sign up to be a disciple of Jesus, you actually are basically trying to grow to really believe, not just in Jesus, but you're trying to believe what Jesus believes about all those aspects of your life. And the hardest one for dudes is to believe that God is involved in the provision, the sustenance, and that he will help us to provide what we need to provide for. That's just, I don't know why, but it just seems to be hard. And it's interesting that Jesus starts with a huge crowd and he winnows it down to a few disciples, that he's just trying to get this through to them. Jesus teaches in other times that the normal way of thinking, he calls it the wide way. Most men are going to go with the wide way or the wide gate, where everybody goes, it's easy to get through. But he said, he's talking about, again, the disciples will pick the narrow way. They'll pick the way that most men won't go, or they'll begin to think and believe and bank their lives on the character of God to be true. And because they're going to bank their lives on the character of God, they're going to actually believe when he talks about the Sabbath. Because the Sabbath cuts to the core of our fears about provision and about food, right? And about what true bread is. And if we can somehow, maybe someday, really settle the issue that God really does love us and that he knows that he's actually given us the job to provide, right? Even the Apostle Paul said, if you guys don't work, you're not going to eat. Okay? And it was more like a challenge. Like he's saying, work, guys, you should work so that you can eat. But Paul also knew that beyond our labor, the work that we do, that way beyond and sort of involved in all of that is the source, the one that gives us life and breath and everything in it, that gives us the ideas in the middle of the night that might begin to entrepreneur a new business, that gives us the wisdom and the insight to make the right decisions. So, Jesus is basically going, and then as we go through this, chapter 6 of John, he just keeps saying, I am the bread of life, and the bread that I give you guys, it will finally be bread if you'll eat it, if you'll stop doubting it, if you'll really eat the bread I give you, you'll actually be satisfied. You won't have to keep looking for all this stuff, and you won't have to keep overlooking. Next week, we're going to talk about how to get beyond the overlooking for bread. This week, I just want you to process, just like I was challenging you to finally, maybe after hearing it for 50 years that we should help the poor, I was trying to say, look, can we get on with it now? Can we just finally be about the poor? I want you to maybe consider the same thing. If you've heard about the Sabbath your whole life, and at times you've tried it, to really maybe this time, I'm 54, to say, I'm really going to pay attention to this. Where is the line between God's provision and our work? Maybe on a piece of paper, just draw a line. We'll do it right now. We're going to go God's provision on one side. We'll draw a big line. We're going to go man's work. All right. So do that. Well, God's provision, man's work. Where would you naturally put the line? Is it halfway? It's kind of God does half of it for us, and then we do the other half. Where would you put it? Maybe I won't tell you where I think it is this time, but I want you to. We're going to process that together this morning. But I want to leave you with this kind of just thinking, beginning the Sabbath talk. if you remember the Genesis story, God, he does, all of a sudden the earth is formless and void, and then he begins to do the creation narrative. And so he brings light in, and then he begins to do plants and animals. And then if you remember, on the sixth day, he goes, let's create man and woman. And then on the seventh day, God rests. And so I just want to drop this idea on you. We oftentimes think the Sabbath is a way to rest after we've worked for 6 days. So it's like the seventh day is the rest day after the work. Really, the order that God gives us is that on the sixth day, he creates us. On the next day, he rests. So if you were a human and God went, poof, you're now a man and there's a woman, the very first day that we would have lived in his creation, what are we doing? We're resting with him. We're resting. And so, again, think about the Sabbath. Isn't just like adding a day where you just try to recover from all you've done, but the Sabbath experience, getting the Zoe life of God in us, is where you actually live a life where you're working out of your rest. That because you can trust God, you aren't going to have to work as hard, and he's going to then respond to your faith in him. And as I always had somebody say, even in regards to our money, we can do a lot better financially giving God 10% and letting him invest that than if we try to invest all 100% ourselves. It's the same idea that when we truly trust God and we commune with him and we rest, then our work seems to go a little bit better. So that's just the beginning. I think we're going to Sabbath talk for 2 or 3 weeks on this. I think it's going to be huge. So we'll have you interact with the spectrum, the line, see where you guys feel right now, and try to be honest with this. If you're older, be honest with the young guys. The young guys they haven't screwed it up as bad as we old guys. Maybe we can share some words of wisdom that will save decades of time and misery and bring the hope of God to each other. So love you guys. Have a great day today. Bye-bye.